I rise today in strong support of implementing paid family and medical leave in Connecticut. I want to thank the proponent of this legislation, and I appreciate the debate that's taking place tonight. But I want to rise in strong support of this legislation for two overarching reasons. First, paid family leave is essential to the health and well-being of the mother and the baby. And second, I believe that paid family leave will benefit Connecticut's economy overall. First, with respect to the health of the mother and the baby, paid family leave has enormous benefits for the physical and emotional health of the mother and the baby. Women who go back to work too soon experience higher rates of postpartum depression, delayed physical recovery, and greater emotional and physical burdens. And their newborns have an increase in sickness, developmental issues, and health complications, and are less likely to be breastfed and experience that important bonding time with the mother. And I think it's important to break down the health and well-being into two key categories. The physical recovery. The physical recovery post-labor is one of the most strenuous, painful, and difficult times in a woman's life. I'm so blessed to have just gone through this experience, and I can say that 12 weeks is the bare minimum needed for physical recovery from labor. And I was so fortunate that everything went smoothly. For many women, there are complications, there are preterm births, there are cesarean sections, which is a major surgery, which doctors recommend a minimum of 6 weeks recovery. I have to give a shout out to my mother who had 5 C-sections within 10 years. And I don't know how her body did that within such a short period of time, but I've heard many stories from her about just how strenuous and long and painful the recovery was. But I also think it's important to talk about the mental and emotional health and well-being of the mother. And I think this is something that we don't often talk about because there's a stigma around this. But the reality is many women face postpartum depression. In fact, 15% of mothers face this, and up to 80% of mothers face or experience baby blues, and including myself. And I know many other women out there and friends and constituents that I've talked to. And these mental health issues cause severe anxiety, stress, a lack of sleep, many mental problems for the mother. And we now know that this is also contributing to outcomes for the baby as well. We know that when mothers have postpartum depression and aren't able to have adequate time to rest and recover emotionally and mentally after labor, that this is having negative outcomes on babies as well. Significant research shows that period from 0 to 3 is so important to the health and well-being of the baby, and that mothers with mental health issues, we're seeing negative academic outcomes among babies, we're seeing negative physical outcomes, we're seeing insecure attachment, and a range of other physical and emotional issues with babies as well. And so I think that the point about mental health is really important and something we need to talk more about. So that 12 weeks of recovery is critical for the health and well-being of the mother and the baby. Again, I think 12 weeks is the bare minimum. I wish we were going farther. Many European countries give up to a year of paid family leave, but I think 12 weeks is that minimum required. I also want to note that on the mental health issue, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, we know that 15% of women have postpartum depression, 80% of women have baby blues, and we also know, according to the Urban Institute, that 55% of children living in poverty have mothers who experience depression. And again, face insecure attachment and negative health outcomes. And I think this is another thing that's so unfair about our current laws, is that there's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor, and so many low-income women don't have access to paid family leave or to resources necessary or to be able to take that time off to have that important time, bonding time with their babies. So that's why this legislation is so important. And finally, I just want to say, I think the point hasn't been made yet, that I really believe this will benefit our economy overall. And that's for 3 main reasons. One of the main ways we can improve our economy and improve our gross state product is to boost participation among women in the workforce. Currently, only 12% of private sector workers and 17% of public sector workers have access to paid family leave. And as a result of this lack of access to paid family leave, we're seeing increasing turnover among women. We're seeing women dropping out of the workforce, lower wages, and a greater reliance on public assistance, which costs our state. So I think this will help save costs for our state, and it will also boost women's participation in the labor force. According to a recent McKinsey study, if female employment rates were to match male rates in the US, our overall GDP would rise by 5%. And worldwide, if women's participation matched that of men, the world's GDP would increase by 28 trillion or 26% by 2025. So boosting women's participation will help our economy. It will also save our state costs. We know mental health costs our country $193 billion a year, and due to the lack of accessible paid family leave, 15% of workers in our state were forced to go on public assistance. So this will also save those costs as well. And when we look at other states like California who've implemented this policy, we've seen more productivity, less turnover, and it's actually saved business costs because they haven't had to hire new workers and they've seen more loyalty among their employees. And thirdly, this legislation is essential to attracting young women, millennials, and young families to our state. When I talk to my friends that live in Boston, they say they'll never leave because Massachusetts is one of the few states that has paid family leave, and this policy is so important to them and their families. So if we want to make our state more friendly to working women, more friendly to families, I think this legislation is critical. And again, I just want to thank the proponent of the bill, Representative Porter. I want to thank all of the advocates who've been fighting for this for many years. I know that we have heard some concerns from businesses, but we've also heard a lot of support from businesses. I know this is a major shift, but it's an important shift. We need to do a better job of accommodating women and families in our workforce. So for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I strongly support this legislation. I truly think this will benefit the health and well-being of women and families across our state, and it will benefit our economy overall. And I urge my colleagues to support this legislation and honored to be able to stand in favor of this today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.